То с какого места пишем сразу же. Звук хороший. Видимость. Хороший ли звук? И пишем с какой кто области. Кто с какой области пишем, и пишем хороший ли звук и видимость. Пишем, слышно ли меня, и сразу же пишем, с какой вы области. Пишем, кто с какой области и слышен ли звук. Как вам видимость? Пишем видимость по пятибалльной оценке. Все ли видно, все ли слышно? Откуда вы? Казахстан. Надо сказать Алга. Так, там у нас какой-то Roblox происходит. Не Улубурга. Так, впереди у нас, как обычно, палестинцы. Что с качеством видео? Пишите, на какую оценку вы качество видео оцениваете от 1 до 5. И звук. И пишем, откуда вы.
But the people are in the streets. You can pay off a minute, you can't pay off me.
Штир удалил свое сообщение. Hello. Cool.
Then you won't be able to read. Ще одна є. Ого, чого? Це два тільки вистачає. Так, воно, Віталій по телефоні. Я думав, ви почали свою фігню вести. Як стало. Давління Бамбас, слава кокаїні. Всяке таке.
Богдан, вітаю. Мочи козлов. Jan?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, very good.
Good to see you.
Вітаю. Вітаю, хлопче.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна! Україна! Героям України тричі! Ворогам України тричі! Good afternoon, my friends, and welcome to another one of our lovely Ukrainian rallies, where we inform the world about what's going on in Ukraine and why it's not just a problem for Ukraine, but instead it is indeed a global issue. Russia is everybody's problem, because Russia has denied the possibility for world peace that Ukraine sacrificed so much to achieve by giving up the third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world in the Budapest Memorandum. Russia has betrayed that agreement. And now, well, we reap what we sow, because the world did not respect its promises to Ukraine, and now Ukraine is the only shield of Europe and of the free world, defending it from Russia. But before we go any further, we're going to start this rally, as we always do, with the Ukrainian anthem.
Ні слава, ні воля, ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу. Покажем, що ми, браття, козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу. Покажем, що ми, браття, козацького
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Yesterday I've been in a lovely event, my friends. It was an event with our good friend John Sweeney. It was an event where they spoke about the measures that need to be taken to deal with the Russian terrorist regime, where they gave many different stories of people in Ukraine, people who have suffered, people whose friends and family have been killed and tortured, and worse, by the Russian terrorist regime. It's been a quite an emotional event, by the way. It's difficult to speak about all of this. But the truth of the matter is that people are still not aware about even half of the atrocities that the Russian terrorist regime commits. They attack civilians on purpose, not as an accident. They do it so that they break the country that they are fighting against. They did this in Syria against the peaceful population. They leveled Aleppo to the ground. And they continue to do this every single time Russia engages in war. They break the Geneva Convention again and again and again. This is one of the main topics we need to speak of, but the absolutely most important point that we are here to send everybody to, for everybody to know, is that Russia does not plan on stopping in Ukraine. That is the terrifying reality of the situation. You see, there are many conflicts happening all over this world. The consequences of the results of those conflicts might reach this country eventually. However, Ukraine is different. The Russo-Ukrainian war is very much different. The consequences of the Russo-Ukrainian war will reach this country immediately. We have already heard from the German intelligence that the Russians are planning a provocation to test how tightly knit NATO is, how much NATO plans to uphold Article 5. Now you might be asking, what's Article 5? I'll tell you what it is. An attack against one is an attack against all. That is Article 5 of NATO. It's the only thing that's been preventing the Russian terrorist regime from attacking countries like Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania. Smaller countries than Russia, countries with a small population, countries with a lot of ethnic Russians and Russian speakers within them. So how come Russia attacked Ukraine and not those countries? It's very simple. NATO membership
Russia is still afraid of NATO. However, as this war continues, as it is shown more and more that the free world seems toothless to the Russian threat, Russia finds itself willing and able to keep pushing against the free world. Well, if there's no pushback, why stop in Ukraine? Why stop in Moldova, in Belarus, anyway? Russia has no borders, Putin says, many times. You can look it up. He says that on many, many different videos. You can find it all over the place. Russia has no borders. He says this because Russia will expand as long as it can, until it is stopped. That is the imperialist mindset of the Russian terrorist regime. Once again, my friends, the main point that we are here to speak about is that Russia will never stop in Ukraine. If Russia takes over Ukraine, Russia will be stronger, Russia will be more brazen, will be more competent, and it will move on. Not too long ago, a Ukrainian official said that if Ukraine falls, then soon enough, the British will have to pick and choose whether or not they're willing to fight and die for NATO. Soon enough, that time will come. Because Russia will attack either Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, or any of these countries that they feel enabled to attack. They will do it if they beat Ukraine. That is the difference between victory and defeat. That is the difference between peace and war. We can achieve peace now. If Ukraine gets what it needs to put down the Russian military for good. But if Ukraine falls, if Ukraine is allowed to be ground to dust by the Russian terrorist regime's tactics and the tactics of attrition, then my friends, the truth of the matter is, this country will have to make a very difficult choice to respect its promises to NATO, to respect the rest of its allies in Europe, or to simply let it all go, to let go of all foreign influence this country has, and to be segregated, isolated to its own borders forever. That is not greatness, my friends. That is not initiative. That is not leadership. This country has a history of leadership, and it should stay true to that history. It does not have a history of being somebody else's puppet, being somebody else's errand boy. So why should it be an errand boy of anyone right now? No, my friends. The United Kingdom should make treaties with fellow European powers like France and Germany on equal terms, so that they treat each other as friends and partners, not as slaves, not as errand boys, not as puppets. That is what this country deserves. Leadership on the world stage. But how can there be leadership when isolationists are gaining more and more power in the free world? These isolationists who scream and shout about how patriotic they are, like the likes of Orban, for example. I absolutely love it. Orban screams and shouts as one of the main figures of isolationist demagogues, of isolationist populists in the world stage. And he continues to say how patriotic he is, how important it is to stay true to European values. But at the same time, he allows the Chinese police to operate freely in Hungary. At the same time, he gets Hungary hooked on China and trade with them. He gets Hungary hooked on Russia and their relationship with them. He gets Hungary in China. Slovakia have been clear. They're Trojan horses in Europe. The same can be said about many others in the free world, unfortunately. Now, my friends, I've been asked repeatedly not to speak about a certain individual. A certain individual who calls President Zelensky a dictator and who calls Putin his personal friend. I will not be speaking about this individual, but we all know who I'm talking about. I will not be speaking about him for a main reason, not only because I was asked not to, but also because the most important message we have to send to the rest of the world is a message of unity. Unity in the free world. Unity to the values of the free world. That is not what we're seeing. We are seeing Russia, China, Iran, North Korea cooperate far more closely. And the free world, people who used to call each other ally and friend and brother, they're not cooperating at all. They're putting tariffs on each other. They're attacking each other verbally, threatening each other on the world stage. What is this madness? We cannot afford this. We cannot afford this disunity. People have fooled the great people of this country into thinking that exiting the EU would be a good idea. It wasn't. It was not a good idea at all. This country lost a lot. It had special treatment in the EU. How will it recover the relations with the EU, with fellow European countries? It will be difficult. But that is the path we should choose. A path of international relations, a path of trade and cooperation, not a path of isolation, not a path of empty pride. This country had more power in the past than it does now. That's a fact. But it still has the potential to rise to the top of the world stage. But it will not rise to the top of the world stage if there is this buyer's remorse, that it doesn't need the rest of Europe for anything. Europe is its main trading partner. Europe has the same threats as this country has. Russia is the #1 threat for this country and for all of Europe. And may everybody know this. Everybody who speaks about all kinds of wars in the world stage, ask yourself, are the people you speak against a direct threat to the United Kingdom? If the answer is no, then perhaps your priorities should change. Perhaps we should together be facing the #1 threat to this country itself. Perhaps we should all be facing against Russia. All together, we will win.
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 Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Stop Russia, stop the war.
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russia war criminals.
Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russia war criminals.
Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russia war criminals.
Seize Russian assets.
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 No trade with Russia.
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 Now, unlike the opinion of some people who might not be informed enough about this topic, Ukraine is not the only country that Russia has stolen lands from. Japan is another country like that. The Soviet Union back in the day took the Kuril Islands away from Japan after Japan had already capitulated in World War II, which is akin to somebody surrendering in a fight, in a UFC fight, for example, or in a boxing match. They surrender, they throw the towel, and you keep punching them, you keep hitting them down and trying to kill them. That is the nature of Russia. Somebody surrenders and you keep hitting them. Classic. Another nature of Russia is to always attack countries that are smaller than them, that they see as weak, as they did with Finland. They still hold Karelia, which belongs to Finland. Thank you very much. Russia needs to give back all of those territories. Russia needs to de-Russify the occupied territories. Russia needs to de-Putinize the ethnically Russian territories. That is the future, my friends. That is what we should all strive for. A complete and utter defeat of the Russian terrorist regime. Just like there was a denazification of Nazi Germany after World War II, there needs to be a change like that happening in Russia, within their borders, controlled by the free world. We can no longer leave it to the Russians to fix their own country. They have lost all credibility. And now, my friends, this war that was supposed to be fought by the Russians against their own government is being fought by the Ukrainians. This country that threatens the whole world with nuclear war every single time something doesn't go as they please is now being faced by one country, by Ukraine. Today, I saw a little video where that was exposing what the Russians say in their quote-unquote history books in school. They openly say that they're at war with the US. They openly say they're at war with NATO. But they're not. We know they are not. We know the Russian terrorist regime is struggling against only Ukraine. And Ukraine is not even getting the full support of the free world. Ukraine only gets a few bits and pieces of help here and there. But why? Why risk the lives of British soldiers in a future confrontation with Russia when Britain can keep out of this war by helping Ukraine win, by giving Ukraine what's necessary to beat Russia down, to prevent this country from having to face off Russia in the future, to prevent all of Europe from having to directly intervene in this war. It's very simple, my friends. Arms mean peace. And when you are attacked by the psychopathic Russian terrorist regime, you better hope you have enough arms to defend yourself, to survive. For if you side with a psychopath, even if he wins at the end, you still lose. Because well done, you sided with a psychopath. And when he wins, when there's nobody else to oppose him, he's going to target you instead. That is how a psychopathic mindset works, my friends. We need to realize this at long last. Russia will not stop in Ukraine. Russia did not stop in Georgia. They did not stop in Belarus. They did not stop in Kazakhstan or in Transnistria in Moldova. They will never stop until they are stopped forever. That's the message we are here to give to all the people who are interested in stopping the many wars that are happening in this world. As we said before, my friends, Ukraine is the country that has sacrificed the most to achieve world peace. Ukraine is the country that gave up the third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world in exchange of nothing more but promises of peace. What did Russia do for world peace? They spat in the face of the very idea so that they would have their petty conquests. How disgusting. How truly pathetic. A wannabe imperialist regime that is not a world superpower, but instead throws its own people as meat to the meat grinder, just to get a few more square kilometers of land. Land that's mined to the brim. Land that's destroyed by a war that they have started, that they have escalated. It will only stop if they are stopped.
жест.
And for that, my friends, we need to do what's necessary. We need to give Ukraine what they need to finally bring this war to an end. Fighter jets for Ukraine!
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 Air defense 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 for Ukraine!
Long-range missiles 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 for Ukraine!
Let Ukraine strike back!
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 My friends, I remind you all that our rallies happen here, 10 Downing Street, on Wednesdays at 6, on Sundays at 3 o'clock. Heroям слава, my friend, thank you. I hope that's what he said, Slava Ukraini, but I'm not sure. I didn't hear exactly. Is that what he said, yeah? Okay, good. What a nice guy, what a nice guy. Sometimes it's difficult to hear, my friends. You know, I remember sometimes we had people here who are not Ukrainian speakers who came here to just show their support, which is lovely, it's amazing. We're very grateful to every person that shows up and does that. It means a lot to all of us. Now, one particular individual, he misheard a little bit, and when we were saying to the heroes of Ukraine 3 times, and they were saying glory, 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 and to the enemies of Ukraine 3 times, and the guy made a mistake, he said glory accidentally. It was an honest mistake, you know. Sometimes people make these mistakes, it's perfectly fine. We are here to interact with the crowd. In fact, these rallies are unique for that, because we're willing and able to interact with the people who might want to ask a question, who might want to participate, who might want to join us in our rallies, to add their voice to ours. That's very good. That's what we stand here for, that's what we defend. And that is how it should be, as freedom of expression is one of the main values of this great country we're in right now. Now, freedom of expression means nothing if you lose to demagogues, to populists, to democratic backsliding, like what Orban and Fico are doing, or like what's happening in many countries in the free world, let's be honest. That is something we need to oppose, my friends, because that is a move to get closer to the Russian terrorist regime. We should not allow that. We should never allow the people who defend the values of the Russian terrorist regime to succeed. Because at the end of the day, Russia has no real values. They will pursue whatever they feel like will create the most trouble within their enemies. If their enemy is an autocratic regime, they will spread democracy, as funny as that might seem. But the truth of the matter is, Russia does not have any enemies that are autocrats. Autocrats are their best friends. Iran, North Korea, China. Those are the friends of Russia. Those are the people who support Russia. And the enemies of this country as well. So let us all know our enemies. And let us all know our friends. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
And now, my friends, we're going to have a short musical break.
Так, идем к палестинцам, посмотрим, какой у них там движ. Пока у нас музыкальная пауза.
Israelis a terrorist state!
Солнце заката, да. Кто хочет, тот и делает свои митинги.
What we think about international politics, what we think about the leaders of the free world. We hope for the best for every single country of the free world. We hope they will recover from this new spread of populism. We hope they will not go that way. They will not try to make simplistic excuses for complicated issues. We hope the U.S. will recover from this recent turmoil that we're going through. We hope everything is fine. However, the truth of the matter is, my friends, our enemy is always the same. And our enemy always, our enemy always supports these kinds of turmoil, these kinds of internal strife. Russia will always support that. Not too long ago, there was an attempt to burn down the house of Sir Keir Starmer. Almost discussed his name there. That would have been bad. So Keir Starmer almost had his house burned. And you know what? From what we hear, some of those people who were trying to burn it were ethnic Ukrainians. We fully and completely condemn such actions by any person. But the truth of the matter is, my friends, it's clear who is sponsoring these people. It's very clear. It was Russia. Every single time. You can find Russia banking all of these individuals, bankrolling them, giving them millions sometimes. Well, usually it's rubles, so at the end of the day it's not that valuable. However, Russia still has resources, Russia still has manpower, Russia still has the ability to keep this war going. Today I saw a bit of a harrowing picture, a harrowing bit of news, something that's been happening actually, something that's not new at all. The Russians have been, through their influence in, for example, sub-Saharan Africa, getting people to go to Russia by telling them they were going to work as cooks and as cleaners. And in reality, when they showed up in Russia, they were immediately sent to the front line. People who had nothing to do with this war. People who bore no ill will against Ukraine or against any other country. People who didn't want to fight for the peace. And they were forced to the front line by the Russian terrorist regime because they were fooled by the Russian terrorist regime to think that they were trustworthy, that they could be trusted, that they would get a nice work, some nice jobs there, they would earn some extra cash. My friends, we cannot trust psychopaths. Psychopaths will not tell you the truth. It doesn't matter what kind of golden mountains they promise you. At the end of the day, it's all going to be the abyss. Every single time. That's the only thing that will deliver. The Russian terrorist regime has tried to negotiate with many different countries. Some of those we have already mentioned, like Hungary, for example, the self-proclaimed independent of this country, Orban, who allows CCP police to run around in this country and imprison people as they will. These quote-unquote paper patriots, they cannot be trusted, my friend. These individuals, these populists, who always point fingers. Oh, it's all the fault of the Bidens. Oh, it's all the fault of those guys, of these guys. Who make simplistic reasons for why things aren't doing well. They cannot be trusted. This is the fringe right. But at the same time, we cannot put our trust with the fringe left either. Individuals who call themselves communists, individuals who cry and weep for the fall of the Soviet Union and say, oh, how great it was, how amazing of a country it was. These individuals cannot be trusted. The Soviet Union was a disgusting regime. One of the most disgusting, if not the most disgusting regimes in human history. They have killed millions of people. They have tried to exterminate Ukraine twice by taking away all of the grain from Ukrainian towns and villages and forcing those people to starve to death. And you know what happened to that grain? To add insult to injury, not only did the Soviets starve the Ukrainians by taking away the grain from them, but they sold that grain to Nazi Germany in exchange for Nazi weapons and cooperation. Stalin begged Hitler to be part of the Axis powers, but Hitler did not answer, because Hitler was planning an attack on the Soviet Union since day one. But Stalin didn't realize it. He was too stupid to realize. He did not oppose he did not oppose Nazi Germany ideologically. In fact, when he was made aware of the attack of Nazi Germany against the Soviet Union in the Operation Barbarossa, you know what Stalin did? He fled to the countryside. He denied it. He claimed that it was already lost. He only returned a little bit later. What a pathetic individual. And this is the individual the fringe left worships. Oh, how amazing socialism is, how amazing communism is. Yeah, never worked. But I'm sure it's going to be very amazing if you try it again and kill millions once again. But there's a caveat to this situation, my friends. Russia is not quite a communist regime. It's not quite a socialist regime. It's not quite a capitalist regime, and it's not quite a fascist regime. What is Russia? Russia is a country-sized criminal syndicate. It functions like a criminal syndicate. It does not have a strict ideology. In St. Petersburg, 3 flags stand proudly side by side. One of the Russian Empire, the second of the Soviet Union, the third of the current Russian terrorist regime. If we are dealing with only ideology, these 3 flags, they should be the antithesis of each other. They should never be standing together. But in Russia, such contradictions don't matter. The only thing that matters is to keep those in power, and those who have no power down forever. That is the system in Russia. Might makes right. I don't like to quote Marx, but you all know I love this quote from him. This is a very good one. The Russian state has inherited the brutal ruthlessness of the Mongolian Khan and the low cunning of the Mongolian slave. Truly, wiser words about the Soviet Union have never been spoken before, or about the Russian Empire back in the day. Of course, Marx, thank you very much for that. Of course, Marx was speaking about the Russian Empire, but the Soviet Union did not change that much. You know, Lenin, for all his faults, he was a disgusting individual in his own right, Lenin. However, he was not quite as bad as Stalin, that's a certainty. Lenin was actually trying to tackle the alcoholism problem in Russia. He was trying to forbid it to an extent. But you know what happened when Stalin gained power? He figured out that a drunk population is more easy to control. It's far easier to be controlling a bunch of drunk bastards who are ready and able to fight for a little bit of a hit of vodka. Well, my friends, the truth of the matter is nothing has changed. Russia still lives in this backwater mentality. And we need to understand this. We can't negotiate with Russia and that. Why not make Ukraine the drug factory of the free world? Why not help Ukraine beat back Russia and live together as friends? Why not fix this problem forever and not have to deal with any further wars in Eastern Europe or wherever else Russia decides to destabilize? But no, here we are once again, my friends, trusting in the good sense of Russia, and once again relearning what we knew all along, that Russia cannot be trusted. Thank you, my friend. That, my friends, is a big issue nowadays. Many people still think that we can simply talk to Russia, oh, we can talk to them, we can make a deal. The art of the deal, right? It's the art of the deal. Well, you cannot make a deal with those who think you're stupid and who are planning to fool you. You know, there was a widespread belief that Ukraine was going to lose this war in 3 days. The reasons for that belief are very interesting. For those who are interested in this, stick around. Russia was completely and utterly certain in its military capabilities that it could take over Ukraine in 3 days. They were preparing for a parade much more than an actual war. The Americans had very good intelligence on what the Russians thought, what the Russians believed. That's why the Americans predicted the beginning of the full-scale invasion. And you know what? They were right. Everybody in the world should have trusted the Americans when they said that. Back in the days when they still had reason. We should have trusted them. But you know where's the caveat? The Americans were wrong about one thing. The Americans believed that the Russians had made the right assessment that they could take over Ukraine in 3 days. They did not understand that the Russians did not know how their own military would work. They did not know that the Russians would be this incompetent. So they believed them. But my friends, there is one power of Russia that must never be underestimated under any circumstances whatsoever. Their power to misinform. Russia is the most capable country in this world in terms of misinformation, by far. Look at the resources they have at their disposal. Nothing compared to what the free world has. And yet, they spread lies and deceit, and people buy it. People believe in them. How come? How is this happening? I'll tell you how, my friends. The Russians have focused all of their attention, all of their abilities on this particular skill to make sure that the free world tears itself asunder like it is right now. They've been successful to a large extent. So we must face them in the sphere as well. We must show the whole world that politics does matter, that not all politicians are the same, not all countries are the same. We must face against this cynicism, this chronic cynicism that, oh, what does it matter if we vote or not, it's all the same. It does matter. Because if you can no longer vote, you can no longer choose. And if you can no longer choose, you're no longer human. You're but cattle of your regime. That's what happens when you stop being able to imprint your will on the way your country works. That is what happened in Russia. Their people are but cattle of their regime. Little pigs and cows squealing as they march to their deaths. But why? Why is it that people are allowing this tendency to happen in the free world as well? Why is this happening here, my friends? It should not. People should know better. This country, alongside with many other countries, but especially this country, has fought a war against Nazi Germany. And this country was never on the side of the Nazis. Ever since the beginning of the war, the United Kingdom opposed Nazi Germany ideologically and militarily, fully. But what did the Soviet Union do? Well, they were on the same side in the beginning of World War II. On 9th of May, when we engaged with some Vatniks, with some Russophiles, we asked them a simple question. Whose side did the Soviet Union start World War II on? Whose side were they on? Were they on the side of the Allies or on the side of the Axis powers, of the Nazis? They did not want to answer. I mean, of course they didn't. Because the Soviet Union was helping the Nazis. They scream and shout about, oh, Ukro-Nazis. But they were cooperating with the Nazis. They gave them the metal, they gave them the oil, they gave them the grain to fuel the Nazi war machine at the beginning of World War II. As the Nazis were invading Poland from the west, the Soviets were invading Poland from the east. That is reality, my friends. Russia never beat fascism. Russia was fascism. It just so happened that fascists oftentimes start eating each other when they feel like they're winning. It happens every single time when fascists take power. It happened in Russia. We could see it loud and clear. We could see Prigozhin in his little failed rebellion against Russia. So good, so much good it did to him. The man was a fool. Honestly, I have to say I overestimated him. I thought he would have been more cunning to know that the Russian terrorist regime could not be trusted when they gave him this pardon, this allowance to go back to Russia and to recruit in Russia. The man should have known. He paid for his mistakes by falling out of the tallest window possible. His plane was struck down near Moscow by the Russian terrorist regime he fought so much for. But this situation, my friends, this case of Prigozhin, it should serve as a lesson to every person on this earth. If you side with Russia, if you help Russia, it does not matter what they promise you. It does not matter where they promise they will deliver. At the end of the day, no matter what they say they will give you will always lose far more than what you will gain. And that, my friends, is a lesson that should have been learned long ago. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
And now, my friends, we're going to have another short musical break. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Once again, my friends, I remind you all that our rallies happen here on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock and on Sundays at 3. If you would like to add your voice to ours and contribute to our cause, please come here and show your support. It doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter who you are. What matters is that you understand that this is an important message to send to everybody in the world. That is what we stand here for. And another reminder, my friends, next month, on 12th July, there's going to be the Toloka. Once again, a charity event where, you know, Vlad is a big fan of the Toloka. He always comes there. He dances the whole time. That's right. You know, he's one of the most energetic dancers in the Toloka. If you want to see him give it his all, come along and he will show it to you. You know, he does it very nicely. It's an inspiration to all the dancers in the world. By the way, we have some other dancers here from Prolisa, you know, lovely guys. But my friends, truth of the matter is, come, if you can make it, please come to the Toloka, 12th July. It's in the Fulham Broadway Ukrainian hub. And we will begin
Пишем, кто с какой области.
later on. It's still about a month until the event. But of course, if you can make it, try to make that
Гости откуда вообще?
lovely event. So there's other events that happen.
Несколько моторов. Слава Украине, хлопче.
The Shabbat that happens, that's been happening every year. And some other events too, some other
Это не твои, там
marches
4 фуры были.
marches for the captives of war. And this is a very tragic topic to talk about, my
Moldova,
friends. The
Chisinau.
captives of war and the Ukrainian children are one of the things that it's really it lacerates our hearts to be speaking about this.
А ты с Молдовы нормальный человек или...
Thousands of
Или
Ukrainian
Русня?
children have been abducted by the Russian terrorist regime, and they are now being brainwashed to support Russia in all means and go and fight for Russia. That is what they are doing right now. This has been basically admitted by Russia. They of course, they word it differently. They say, oh, they rescued quote, Ukrainian children from the evil Nazis, and now they're, you know, teaching them how
Я думаю, когда путинский режим упадет, тогда и Приднестровье вернется обратно в родную гавань.
About a week ago, my friend Yanis, you know, today he's not in this rally, but usually he comes here. He informed me that an individual who we were talking to later on told him, asked him if there's any proof of this, that the Ukrainian children are being abducted, with a little smirk on his face.
Мочи козлов.
But my friends, if somebody
Флаг узнаешь по центру?
asks you this, don't lose your grip, don't get upset. The truth of the matter is, all you have to do is to look at what the Russians themselves say. They admit this. This is one of those things where both sides will admit that it's happening. I mean, the Russians will word it differently. Once again, they will say, oh, they rescued those children. But they will admit that they took those children. They will
Александр, кому
admit they're in
нужен?
their possession. How can anybody
Их задача была
deny this?
умереть.
That's my question.
Задача Александров и Ваник тоже справились отлично.
Рудаков, завтра будет миллион, там посмотри, завтра с лодочка будет первый
I
миллион.
remember one individual long ago, years ago, when I was still going to Speaker's Court. There was this individual
Matthew,
who came to me once again
Matthew.
with this little
День добрый.
sassy smirk
Не
on
пам'ятаю.
his face. And he came to me and was
Приезжай
saying,
в
oh, you know,
Кишинев,
Bakhmut was
покричи
fake,
так.
Bakhmut was fake. And I asked him, hold on a second.
Я
I think it was fake.
думаю, что в
Why-
Кишиневе есть такие митинги.
He said, oh, you know, there's all those, that footage. Yeah, I was like, yeah, there's a lot of evidence, a lot of footage, a lot of, you know, satellite pictures of how it happened, of the corpses.
Если ты смотрел 9 мая, ты, я надеюсь, не пропустил самые веселые моменты.
There's no time on them, so it's fake. I mean, this is one of those things, this is one of those things.
Ну, Приднестровье придется вернуть, ты же знаешь об этом. Они же не могут вечно жить в 89 году.
This individual, he thought that the Ukrainians have faked all of those pictures, all those satellite pictures. So they had enough means to fake the pictures themselves of the corpses and of the satellite images. But they did not have the means to fake a little number at the corner to show the time and the date when it was happening. This is truly and ironically, what this individual was fully believing in. I mean, truly, stupidity can have no end sometimes. I remember at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the Russians had spread this idiotic conspiracy theory. Oh, you know, the biolabs in Ukraine, there's all those biolabs, look at that, they're developing viruses there. You know what, some people actually believe in that. Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying they need to force
Знаешь, почему с Приднестровья все едут в Кишинев работать?
The Russians were
Почему так
saying
получилось?
those were CIA biolabs. And we got American politicians saying, oh, you know what, we should investigate.
Все равно придется
the
вернуть,
CIA
ты же знаешь об
biolabs.
этом.
Lady, the Russians are saying it was you. What is that to investigate? But truth be told, the conspiracy theory was so stupid that, my friends, only somebody with severe mental issues would believe it. They believe that the Ukrainians were developing, in these CIA-backed biolabs, they were developing this virus that would attack only Russian genes.
Друг, скажи мне, в
And at
какой
the
это
same time,
стране?
they themselves say the Ukrainians don't exist.
Это мы в
it's all
Кишиневе,
just
в Молдавии
Russians,
стоим, в центре.
according to the Russians. So which one is it? Let me get this straight. The Ukrainians were developing a virus to kill Russians, right? And yet the Russians say that the Ukrainians are Russians. My friends, these conspiracy theories of the Russian terrorist regime
Собачки, смотрю, мозгов
never
реально как
make
у собачки.
any sense. Just put two of their conspiracy theories together, they debunk each other. It's stupid, it's ridiculous, it's pathetic, it's Russian. It's what they do. It's what they do day and night. It's about time people learn not to trust what these individuals say.
У меня камера очень хорошая, я тут те самые фильтры поставил. Кажется, что светло очень.
Просто в Питере это белая ночь.
Да.
Now, I believe that people should actually see what they're saying.
Слушай,
So that they can
Кишинев,
see how
в
much
Кишиневе, я
Russia
знаю,
hates
нормальные люди
them,
живут.
how much Russia hates this country,
И придет
how much
время
Russia hates
с Румынией
the US,
воссоединяться.
how much Russia hates the free world, and
А вы
everything it
поедете к
stands
себе
for.
туда, в Тольятти.
Day and night they speak about
Тольятти
the
вообще
evil
итальянский
Anglo-Saxon
город.
race.
Да?
They say how much of a
не,
cancer on
издеваюсь.
this world they are. They say they should
Не знаю.
exterminate them all because they're so evil.
Они
That's
в
what the
Тольятти.
Russians say. On
А
their
есть там Тольятти, да,
state-owned
такой?
propaganda
Италии?
media. Day and night they hate on this
У меня
country.
друзья из Тольятти
Day and
были, мы
night
всегда
they
звали
hate
наши
on the
итальянцы.
United States.
Что он звучит?
Friends, it's time to learn who the enemies of the people of this country are. Russian terrorist
Гост,
regime
ты
has
этот
always
флаг,
been that
который
enemy.
на
The
памятнике,
Russian terrorist
узнаешь или
regime
нет?
will always be that enemy until they are stopped for good. And that, my friends, is our message. World, wake up!
World, wake up!
World, wake
Так,
up!
едь сейчас, в этот Крым что-то не едешь.
World, wake up!
Тебе все равно надо будет уходить, когда
Russia is a terrorist state.
с Румынией воссоединится Приднестровье.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Stop Russia, stop the war.
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russia war criminals.
Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russia war criminals.
Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russia war criminals.
My friends, one of our main messages is to inform people that this movement is not charity. This movement is self-preservation, not only for the Ukrainian people, but for the free world. This is an existential threat for this country. Russia is an existential threat for this country.
Это что, два
And if they
подростка там
succeed in
срутся?
Ukraine,
Наверное.
they will only become a bigger threat in the future. It is the number one enemy of Europe, of the free world, of the
Не
United
бойся,
States.
когда путинский
It will
режим
always be
пойдет,
the number one enemy.
Приднестровье. Не, даже пусть Приднестровье остается в 89 году, а Румыния с Молдавией соединятся. А вот тот кусочек пусть живет в 89-м.
Soon as it ends and it's influencing this country right now as we speak, As Russia continues to sponsor
И Украина будет в
awesome
Евросоюзе,
attacks, no kinds of
Молдавия
sabotage
будет в
within this
Евросоюзе,
great country.
а вот та какашка будет в 89 году.
And we also need to remember those people who are the shield of the free world right now, the heroes of Ukraine, who have suffered much to achieve world peace.
Женя, у нас так не общаются. Фильтруй базар.
For those who have died, for those who have suffered, for those who are suffering right now, I invite you all, my friends, to observe a minute of silence. Thank you. It's a message that needs to be sent always, my friends.
Насколько я знаю, молдаван — это все нормальные люди. Кроме тебя, кроме фашиков, кроме русни, кроме ваты. Но вас там мало осталось. Вас скоро пинком под зад и поедешь в свое Тольятти, понял?
Russia is fighting for that kind of a world.
А Приднестровье закроет на колючую проволоку.
Of the powerless will never be heard. A world
Этот самый ключ
where
выкинут
only those
в Черное
at the top
море.
of
И
the
будут
food
они
chain,
там
of the proverbial food chain,
200 тысяч человек
call the shots
жить в 89 году.
for their ambitions. That is the world Russia stands for. A world that returns humanity back to the Middle Ages in its logic.
Скоро
and its
Белоруссию
world
придется
view.
помогать.
No more, my friends.
Там же картошки
We
нет,
cannot allow
ничего
that
нет.
to happen. Russia has claimed that they are desatanizing Ukraine, a modern-day witch hunt, a modern-day medieval state that pretends to be a modern country. What a disgusting entity the Russian terrorist regime is. But alas, my friends,
Так,
it continues to endure
Евгений Овечкин,
because it is not being
завали
taken
свое...
seriously enough.
Ну ты понял, да?
Russia is still not seen
Короче, я сейчас
as the number one
отключаюсь
threat.
и подключусь через 10 минут.
A shame, my friends. It is sad.
Так что не расходимся. Через
It is
10 минут
sad because people
возвращаемся.
risk their own well-being by not taking